And we are live. Mile high hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast, brought to you by milehighhuddle.com, powered by Overtime Media, and sponsored by sportsbetting.com. Enter the free $1 million pick'em contest by visiting sportsbetting.com/pick'em-football. That's sportsbetting.com/pick'em-football for a chance to win $1 million. Guys, my name is Lance Sanderson. I'm your host today, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, Erick Trickel. Erick, first things first, man. After the big news today, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing all right, man. Just trying to cope with everything, I guess. No, I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. It's been a big day. And, man, I absolutely love the fact that we get to have the podcast the night before the Broncos 53-man roster comes out. Yeah. There is so much we're going to be talking about, you guys. I mean, you really don't want to miss this. You want to be here for it. It's going to be a blast. There's going to be a lot of information coming your way. So be ready for it.
Yeah, there was a lot of information. We had a lot of very insightful conversation between me, you, and Nick and Carl and James Campbell on our group chat earlier today. It was really fun just throwing out some different scenarios and stuff like that. But obviously the biggest news in Broncos country today is, without a doubt, the Broncos releasing veteran linebacker Todd Davis, and kind of a surprising move. It's not really so much of a surprise as far as the money is concerned. The Broncos did create $4.5 million in cap space with a $1.5 million dead money hit. So they're creating just a little bit more flexibility, but just the timing of this, and especially given the linebacker position, it's just a very puzzling move to me. Honestly, I don't like this one. And especially, I understand they brought in Mark Barron. I know they brought in Austin Calitro via trade with sending Christian Covington over to the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll get more on that in just a little bit. Justin Cernat obviously going down with that wrist surgery. It's going to be put on IR, it sounds like. The Broncos linebacker depth right now is very questionable, and getting rid of arguably, honestly, your best run defender really doesn't sit well with me. Erick, what about you?
Well, I would just say is that Alexander Johnson was the best run defender, but Todd Davis was the more versatile one. Everybody likes to give him some crap for his play and coverage, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Todd Davis was great in coverage, but he was one of, I think, like 3 linebackers last year that was asked to play in the slot over 100 snaps. Yeah, that is a ridiculous high amount for a linebacker. Todd Davis is very limited in coverage, and despite all that, he does well. He doesn't do great. He does well. And for the most part, he can kind of hold his own. Yes, there's obviously you can go and highlight some big plays that he's given up. You can do that with just about any single player in coverage at any point in their career. Patrick Willis gave up some. Luke Kuechly gave up some. Even Roquan Smith and Bobby Wagner and all these other linebackers that are considered great nowadays. Danny Trevathan, Brandon Marshall, they all gave up plays. You gave up plays. It's just part of the game. Yeah. But he was all right. He was the term Jag applies to him. He was just another guy. He's one of those solid players that's a solid starter that if you can upgrade, you take that chance to upgrade. But he's typically those guys that you want. But again, it was just a money saving move. That's all it was. $4.5 million, and getting that on the cap space this year puts him at like $30.2 million available, I think, right now. So they have plenty of money, but with the salary cap going down next year, they have $166 million. Committed to the salary cap for 2021. Salary cap is supposed to be about $175 million. So if they can roll over all $30 million of this, that gives them about $205 million to work with for the salary cap, with only $166 million committed. So it gives them rough off the top of my head, about $40 million, just under $39 million, $38 million, somewhere around there. So it puts them in a good spot for next year. I feel bad for Davis, especially at this point. In a way, I guess it's bad timing because of everything that you have to do for the situation that's going on in the world before you can join the team. Really puts them in a bad spot for that. But it's also, at least it was before the final cuts that are going to come tomorrow, and giving them a little bit extra time, a little bit of a head start, I guess would be the way to put it, to try and find a new team.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Todd Davis. It really is, just because, I mean, go back throughout his course of his career in Denver as a Bronco. I mean, was brought into the team 2014, so he was a member of the the Super Bowl 50 championship team in 2015. He led the team with 134 tackles last year, was a team captain in 2018, very well respected in the locker room. On and off the field was a leader as well. It's just very unfortunate for him. Now, I want to kind of I have some questions for you here, and I want some takes on this. Mike Cliff stepped on 104.3, The Fan, with Tyler Columbus and Darren McKee earlier this afternoon, and he adds a very interesting remark. And to me, this actually makes the move even just a little bit worse. He said, and I quote, let me pull this up for you guys so you can see this really fast. He said, and I quote, he was not going to be on the roster at $5 million, $6 million really, but $5 million. When you're not going to be on the roster at $5 million, you either cut his pay or it's a release. He actually went on to say, and any more often now, they release rather than have a disgruntled guy, like say week 6 against the Dolphins. Alexander Johnson does like stub his toe or has an ankle injury, and Todd Davis feels 60%. The coach says, Todd, we really need you today. And he says, well, I don't know. You cut my pay to $2.5 million. That really doesn't work well either. So you're generally better off making a clean cut there. Now, Eric, the one thing that I want your take on this is, if that was really the plan for the Broncos all along, why don't they make this roster move back in April when you have an opportunity to go out and sign a Joe Schobert, when you have an opportunity to go out and sign a Nick Kwiatkowski, who signed with the Raiders, or if Corey Littleton, there's another one. Or, I mean, even if you don't want to do that and say, like what I think you're going to say, they want to see how he adapts in this coverage scheme. Well, maybe at the beginning of training camp. Okay, so they want to watch him. 2 weeks ago, he has the calf strain. Why not pull the trigger then? Now you have the injury excuse. You can get rid of him because he's hurt. And then, if nothing else, Justin Sternad goes down. Like, there's so many moving pieces in this. So why didn't the Broncos pull the trigger on this move a long time ago?
Well, so they from what I understand, is they did want to see if he would kind of just grow and develop a little bit and see if that $5 million was worth it. They weren't ever he wasn't going to take a pay cut. They weren't going to approach him about that. So yeah, it just comes down to that. They wanted to see if he can finally grow and develop. And then you mentioned the injury. I'm not 100% sure about his contract, but if they cut him while he was hurt, he could be entitled to the other $4.5 million, which wouldn't do anything to help. I mean, they have to pay him that money anyways because of an injury guarantee. I'm not 100% sure if that was the case or not with his thing. I mean, it's the only thing I could think of to really explain why they wouldn't.
The one thing I want to interject on that really fast, and sorry for interrupting you, is that his salary wasn't going to guarantee until the week 1. So there was no guaranteed money left in. This was a move they could have made. It was like a $1.5 million. And that was a signing bonus they signed when he signed that contract a few years ago. So the guaranteed money, his contract, that $6 million wouldn't have guaranteed until week 1 anyways. $5 million wouldn't have guaranteed until week 1 anyways.
$4.5 million would guarantee. But the thing is that even with that, there still can be hit language in the contract that would guarantee that 4.5 with an injury.
Okay.
Not sure if that was the case here, but that might be the case. That most often is the case. I'll say it that way. But yeah, I mean, if they weren't ever really planning on keeping him for $5 million, they should have cut him in March. Moved on, been able to go and try and get another linebacker, Corey Littleton, Nick Kwiatkowski, any of these guys. But yeah, it makes no sense to me. And I see this going on, being mentioned on Twitter real quick, and I see a couple comments in the chat, and I just want to throw this out there. Is you don't cut a player, just free up $4.5 million to turn around and trade for a player that's going to take up $13 million on your salary cap.
That's
Denver's
true.
not trading for Miles Jack. It's already been something that's been shut down by multiple people. I don't know where the rumor started. I know it's a rumor. I have no idea where it started. It's not going to happen. I would love for it to happen. Don't get me wrong. Just don't see it. Denver's freeing up money to carry over into next year. They're not going and turning around to say this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that one. As much as as awesome as it would be to see Miles Jack get traded and brought into the Broncos, I don't see that happening. I know the Jaguars are honestly in the middle of a full blow up rebuild. They're tanking for Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to bring in Dabo Swinney. But Miles Jack, they just paid him a big contract. He's given a huge extension. What was last year, I think. And he's a cornerstone player. He's a very good linebacker, good in coverage, good in the run, and like a cornerstone player. You can't get rid of everybody, and if they did get rid of Miles Jack, that would hurt them even worse. And like, how could you explain that to your fan base? You're getting rid of one of your top 5 players. Like, that's probably not a move that they're looking to make. I mean, the speculation is great, but at the same time, I don't see that happening. Now,
real quick, I just want to throw this out there. Wrong one. Sorry. This one. It freed up $4.5 million. He had a $5 million base salary this year, only $500 guaranteed. With him getting cut, they still have to pay out that $500,000, which $5 million minus $500,000 is 4.5. That's all that's freed up. It's not $5 million. It's 4.5.
I want to, before I get into this next part of this, I want to grab a couple of super chats here. Mr. Boggins jumping in here and saying the Kelsey blueprint timeline. Free agency, nope. Prime round draft, nuh-uh. Let's grab a 5th round. He got hurt. Let's grab a coverage linebacker who's terrible at coverage and a special teams player. Oh, and throw out Todd Davis while you're at it. I'm assuming that you're talking about coverage against Travis Kelce and coming in Justin Sternad. He gets hurt. Let's grab a coverage linebacker and Austin Calitro. But it is just so very puzzling to me, man. I don't really understand that. Now, I got one other question for you. And not really a question. It's just another point to round this out. Vic Fangio's defense, just the defensive scheme that the Broncos are running this year, it's tasked so heavily. The linebackers have a ton of responsibility in coverage. It's very difficult to learn. Now, the Broncos went out after Justin Sternad got hurt, and they brought in Mark Barron. And I know how you feel about that deal, but they kind of made that move out of necessity. They really had to. But at the same time, with Todd Davis now getting let go, they bring in Austin Calitro to kind of fill the void. Again, why don't you make this move 2 weeks ago when you have some time to get a guy? We're on the doorstep of the season. Week 1 is next week, guys. I mean, the Broncos play a game on September 14th, 10 days away. You got 10 days to get a linebacker acclimated, understand the coverage scheme, and be able to step in and start and play at a high level in one of the most complex coverage schemes for linebackers in the entire NFL. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mark Barron, I said this last week, I'll say it again. People like to tout that he's a hybrid. He's not. That needs to stop just because James is the one who actually said this. Just because he wears a defensive back number doesn't make him a hybrid. He was terrible in coverage when he was at safety. That's why he was moved to linebacker, and he didn't get any better. He actually got worse. I could pull up the stats, but I really don't want to. He played fewer snaps in coverage than Todd Davis did the last 2 years, and still allowed more catches, more yards, more touchdowns, more everything. So having him being your nickel linebacker and cutting Todd Davis for him, yeah, that's not the reason why. It had nothing to do with play. It had nothing to do with Mark Barron being some great coverage guy. It was free up money. Denver went cheap here. There's no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's what happens with a lot of players. Not saying anything about that. Look at Jarrell Casey. Denver got him for a 7th because the Tennessee Titans decided to go cheap because they had to freaking pay Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. Ooh.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's all it is. They went cheap, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They went cheap here. Mark Barron, maybe he finally gets it turned around, but I mean, after 8 years in the NFL, I'm not betting on it. I wouldn't bet on it. We're going to see Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell be your top 2, your starting linebackers. Then when they get into obvious passing situations, 3rd and long, stuff like that, they're going to go down with Mark Barron. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mark Barron being the only linebacker out there and using more defensive backs. Basically kind of going with a 4-man front with seven defensive backs, because Barron is a hybrid. But yeah, I don't know, man. But we got some other super chats here. Dick Boynton came in and says, not disappointed at all with Davis. Mark my words, Elway has something up his sleeves. I'm sure he does, but based on some of the other moves that John Elway and the Broncos have made this late, right before training camp, it's always tough. We saw this last year, Duke Dawson, Devontae Harris. It took a while. You have to learn the new defensive scheme. You have to get acclimated and everything like this. And in this case is Todd Davis. He was the signal caller on the defense.
Yeah,
they no longer have that. Vic Fangio just said not too long ago that they're not sure if they trust Alexander Johnson to be the signal caller with the green dot. So that's another reason why this makes sense. I'm interested to see what he has up his sleeve. I have no doubt that, I mean, Mike Klis even said this, that there's probably going to be another move made before this season kickoff. but I don't know what it is. It's not Miles Jack. Avery Williamson maybe from the New York Jets, but he just restructured his contract to kind of guarantee him there. It's not going to be some big expensive linebacker.
Yeah,
it's not.
Terry Randall coming in here from up in Canada, showing that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is, in fact, a state of being. There is something cooking in Dove Valley, hashtag state of being, hashtag yeah, I have to think that there's at least something going on here. There's something that we're not seeing. Obviously, there's always moves going on behind the scenes. With
Davis.
Demario Davis, okay.
They're going to get rid of Todd Davis for another Davis that's basically the same cost. And the same player. Huh. No, I don't know if that's actually the case, but just kind of making a joke.
Wolf Sky 9 coming in here. Was this a football move? And this is something I didn't necessarily want to get into. It's more of a money-saving move, but with everything that's going on in the state of affairs in the world right now, and Todd Davis being such an activist and everything, does that have any kind of impact on this?
That is something that I really don't want to get into. I don't want to give my opinion on that. I don't want to give anything that I've heard about
fair.
That's not something that I want to keep this about the football, about the Broncos. I don't want to get into that stuff.
That's fair.
David Kilgore came in. He says, $4.99. What kind of player is Austin Calitro? Is he any good? Well, obviously, this is the other big news that happened today. The Denver Broncos traded Christian Covington, who many, like myself and Lance here, when we made our roster projection, actually had making the Broncos roster. Yes. And we are gonna get into our roster projection and kind of go point out we're gonna own our mistakes. We had many. A lot of them were me. I own them. But Christian Compton, he was traded for this guy. I went back and watched him. I was told he's a cover guy. I didn't see it. He's special teams depth to me. I don't see why Denver felt the need to trade for him. They wanted him. They tried claiming him twice last year, I guess. But yeah, I'm not seeing it with him. He went undrafted for a reason. He's a guy. He's just another guy. Maybe he can develop into being something decent. But yeah, he's not a guy I would really hang my hat on. And this gets to another whole point of this is with Christian Covington traded, does DeMarcus Walker now make the roster? We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But we do know for sure that Christian Covington, clearly he wasn't making the roster. If he was, Denver wouldn't have traded him.
Yeah, that's very true. And it sounds like it came down to a DeMarcus Walker versus Christian Covington, and whoever was the guy that's going to make the roster was going to be kept, and whoever wasn't going to make the roster, they were going to try to trade. And that kind of points, obviously, that DeMarcus Walker is probably going to make this roster. Again, we'll get back into that here in a minute. There was an interesting question, and John, I'm not sure if you're out there and you're listening. Stu coming in here and showing some love here with the $10 super. Stu, we appreciate that, man. There was a question earlier, you pulled it up, and it was, are the Broncos broke, like cash broke? And the short answer to that is yes. And James Campbell coming in here from across the pond, the long answer is yes, the Broncos need a change of ownership. The Bolins have done so much, and I hate saying it, but their assets are tied in the team, and the situation is messy. Robert F. Smith would be perfect, a guy that has a lot of asset money, a lot of actually cash on hand. And he actually, James actually brought up a good point in our super chat. I think he brought it up in the chat here as well, about look at what the Kansas City Chiefs are able to do. They're able to go out and sign their guys. They got Patrick Mahomes. They got Chris Jones. Tyreek Hill just got paid. Travis Kelce just got paid. The core of their team, their best players, all just got contract extensions, and they're all in the future. So they still got some opportunity to work with some of the signing bonuses and stuff like that. The Hunt family is worth what, like $15.3 billion. They could buy the Kansas City Chiefs over like 4 times if they wanted to. So they have cash on hand, and they can dump out a whole bunch of salary, like roster bonuses, salary bonuses, and stuff like that to keep their guys in Kansas City. Now, the Bolins, they're not cash rich. They're really the only asset they have is what the Denver Broncos bring them. So they have to reinvest that money back in. And with the ownership dispute between the Pat Bolin Trust and you've got Beth Wallace that's coming in here. Brittany Bolin is the handpicked child, or apparently of the children, the Bolin children, to take over for Pat Bolin in the ownership of the Broncos. There's no actual like incoming money right now. And that plays a big part into signing guys like Justin Simmons, signing guys to long-term extensions in like a Von Miller a few years ago. That's a big thing. Cash on hand is actually kind of a thing that got the Broncos in hot water back in the late 90s when they went on the Super Bowl run. They deferred some payments for John Elway and Terrell Davis so that they can make a payment on building a brand new stadium. Got them in some hot water. There's a big cash flow issue with the Denver Broncos. And I'm with James. I hate to say it. But it is time for a change. The Bowlen Trust is obviously not working well enough with the kids to try to get them ready to go. The kids aren't doing what they need to do to get ready to go, other than Beth and other than Brittany. And if they take over, where's the cash flow coming from? The Denver Broncos itself in the NFL. There needs to be some kind of outside income. And Robert F. Smith, if he's the guy, absolutely. Something has to change. Something absolutely has to change.
Here's my prediction. John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Robert Smith are going to team up. They're going to end up owning the Broncos within 3 years.
That would be amazing.
But yeah, you're spot on. Is the Broncos, they don't have cash on hand. It's been hinted at multiple times by people in the media. But when you give a player a contract, all that money that you have to pay them, that's guaranteed, bonus money, all that stuff has to go in escrow. The Broncos are struggling to do that because they don't have the money to put into escrow for that. So that's the issue there. And then before we get to the roster stuff, I want to go and just take what super chats we have real quick. Kevin Peterson come in with a $5 donation. He says, can we get Chad Jensen to put down his drumsticks and mic to play inside linebacker? If we do, I totally say that he is now nicknamed the Balding Wonder.
Yes, good answer. It was actually kind of funny.
Real quick. So you guys, on Sunday, when Chad and Zach are back on, somebody at least once has to sit there and do hashtag Balding Wonder Chad Jensen. Has to at least once. Or hashtag Chad Balding Wonder Jensen. Has to. Just please, for me. Just one person.
I'm putting the onus on KP because he's the one that asked the question. Kevin, I want you to go in there and just hashtag Balding Wonder wants to play the linebacker. It's gonna be great. This would be so much fun.
But I don't know, Chad. I don't know. Chad might be a little bit old to play linebacker. Not trying to take another shot at him. So going off this question, who of the MMH staff would actually be best to play linebacker?
Well, knowing what I know about you, I was gonna say, knowing what I know about you, little thick in the hips there, but
I've got a nice little gut going. Offensive line, I'm more an offensive lineman's weight than I am a linebacker, guys.
Well, shed those pounds. You ran a 4.55 in college. You could go out there and start covering some people. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, that was over 10. That was 10 years ago.
I know,
my
man.
knees are so messed up. Definitely not Nick.
It's most certainly not me. If you need somebody to be a long and lengthy coverage cornerback in the slot, then sure, I might be able to do that. I ran a 4.57 when I was in college, so I'm probably slow. But I can juke around and move and stuff. I can play cornerback if you needed me to.
Maybe we'll get the chat to ask Luke about it tomorrow. Luke might be fitting.
Yeah, Luke would be all right. Yeah, Luke would be all right there. Let's see if we can grab a couple of questions here really fast.
Dylan Von Arx came out with the $5 donation. Says any DBs that can help fill out inside linebacker. Yeah, but I mean, he's not really a good one. I mean, James Burgess, the New York Jets, just kind of let him go. He was a starter there for a while. He actually is that hybrid that everybody claims Mark Barron to be.
Yeah.
But no, I think the game's just kind of evolved past having true defensive backs dropping down and helping at linebackers. It's kind of evolved past that. You typically have linebackers that can just do well in coverage now instead of having to drop somebody down.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, John, we got Stu. You know what? While we're at this here, go ahead and
okay. Hold on, I can't find it, but I think it was James who said if the Denver Broncos signed Corey Nelson again, and it was like puking emojis. That is so spot on. If they bring back Corey Nelson, I may actually go insane. Corey Nelson was terrible last year, and I will say this: Mark Barron is better than Corey Nelson, but that's not hard.
Yeah. Yep. All right, guys, we're going to grab some matters of business and flip this over and do some of the roster projection that we did, that 2-hour show that we had a couple of weeks ago, predicting the 53-man roster, show some corrections and admit where we were wrong, admit where we were right, and kind of chest thump a little bit and eat some crows. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But anyways, guys, you are watching. Okay, go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to address this. Casey Martin, we didn't say just John Elway and Peyton Manning. We said it was a three-way thing with Peyton Manning, John Elway, and Robert Smith. Robert Smith is the key guy there. And I saw somebody else mention Jeff Bezos. I don't think Denver's the team he really wants. I think there's a one that's kind of in some doubt with their owner, with some potential legal issues, name change, all that stuff like that. That seems to be who he wants.
They happen to reside in our nation's capital, if that gives you any more hints. But
Washington.
Yes, the Washington football team. That's who Jeff Bezos won. Anyways, guys, you guys are watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and obviously my co-host, Erick Trickel. You guys can follow us on Twitter. You follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Notice the CK in Erick. Follow the show as well at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to stay in touch with what we've got going on with the show. Throw some takes out there every now and again, kind of answer some questions as well if we get tagged. But for the most part, follow me and Erick individually for our true takes. While you're at it, follow at Mile High Huddle. That's the mother account. It's the easiest way to stay in touch with what's going on with the Broncos. It's the mothership. You get breaking news and analysis, opinion articles, film breakdowns, stuff like that. Everything regarding your Denver Broncos. And guys, I'm going to push you slightly on over to huddleuppod.com. Go get your merch. That's the merch tent. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a T-shirt. Got coffee cups, face masks, hoodies, anything that suits your fancy. There's some more stuff. I'm actually working with Chad on getting a new Dove Valley Deep Diver shirt, so keep your eyes peeled on that. But if you guys can't and are not in a financial situation to go and support the show that way, the three easiest things that you guys can do is subscribe wherever you're watching this, specifically on YouTube. Our YouTube following is growing exponentially by the day. Like every video you see, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, anything. Like every video that you guys see, click those little thumbs up, as Chris Hernandez likes to say. And if you love it, share it. Share it to everybody. Get in front of as many Broncos fans as you possibly can. Now, Erick, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, the screen share. We're going to add this to us really fast.
Real quick, before we get to that, Josh Rosen was just released.
Wow.
So he's a free agent. I still think he has potential in this. I know this is a Broncos podcast. I just want to say this real quick. I don't think Denver should be in on him. I think that there's issues between Josh Rosen and John Elway. That's why Denver didn't draft him, guys. There's actually stuff to that, just so you know. But yeah, the Colts I think would be a great pickup for him. But I do want to get through these last two super chats that we have before we get to this. Terry Randall, $5 donation. Fire sale in Jacksonville. Can we get not $5, but yeah. Can we get Miles Jack, and for what price? I don't think Denver's in on Miles Jack. Said that earlier. It's just a matter of they cut Todd Davis to free up money to help carry over into next year. They're not going to do that. Free up 4.4 or 4.5 million, and then turn around and pick up a linebacker that's going to cost 13 million against the cap this year, and then what, 12 million, 11 million next year? Like, I don't see that happening. And then David Kilgore. Any chance we go after Pratt or ADC in Cincinnati? I'm not sure I want Pratt. I really liked him pre-draft, but he just seems broken at this point. And
Akeem Davis-Gaither.
ADG, Akeem Davis-Gaither. He's I'm pretty sure he's going to be on injured reserve. He re-hurt his foot, and right before the draft, that's why he fell. And yeah, they wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't have plans for him. So I don't think that he would be available.
I think the only one that would be available is Marcus Bailey, the former Wake Forest linebacker, because they did take 3 linebackers. They got Logan Wilson.
I mean, that's for their future. They want to fix their linebacker.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not going to trade somebody they just drafted. I think Pratt would be the only one that would really be available. But yeah, he was bad last year, guys. He was very bad.
Just one quick thing before we get into the roster breakdown here, and I loved the idea at face value, but the more you look at it, Jordan Martinez coming in on YouTube, and he says the Broncos should go get Earl Thomas, and I'm going to just drop the hammer on this and say absolutely not. That looks like an Antonio Brown situation all over again. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was in some post-marital affairs, let's just say that, with his brother, and had a gun held to his head. He also fought a teammate in camp, a highly respected teammate. His play, especially as a tackler, is not great. Probably better suited as a single high coverage safety as far as a cover 2 guy.
Doesn't fit the scheme.
Exactly. Doesn't fit the scheme. And it's just the Broncos are trying to build a culture here, and Vic Fangio is not going to have a personality like that. I mean, yeah, there's some personalities on this roster. Von Miller, obviously one of them, not quite like Earl Thomas, who's toxic by all reports. Let's just stomp that down immediately. And I understand where you're coming from, because I, for one, am terrified of the Broncos safeties right now. Yes, you have Justin Simmons. Yes, you have Kareem Jackson. Beyond that, the depth is scary. Elijah Holder seems to be the guy coming in. Trey Marshall was bad last year. He's had a pretty good camp from all reports, but Justin Simmons on the franchise tag this year. They're going to have to negotiate a long-term deal with him. Kareem Jackson has an out after this season in his contract. If they want to move on from him, that's 2 starting caliber players at the safety position, and the Broncos need to find something. And to me, other than offensive tackle for next year, safety depth, even particularly a starting safety player, might be the biggest need for this Broncos roster. Like, it really might be.
Yeah. And Duke came in before we get to this roster with $10 donation. Says, I watch football to get away from politics and dealing with 2020. But if the players want to dabble in politics, it's expected us that as viewers chime in. Don't fluff off the fans, Merca. Yeah, we're just here to talk about football. Talking politics just leads to arguments. That's not what we want to do here. So yeah, we're just going to keep it football related. Thanks for the donation, Duke.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. We appreciate that. I will always argue football with you, and especially if we can have an insightful conversation. But I keep my politics to myself, and we're not going to talk about that anymore, please. So any further comments about that, we'll just kind of glance them over. So anyways, guys, speaking of the roster, a couple of weeks ago, Eric, you and I did a 53-man roster projection, and it was a 2-hour show. It was a great show. It was so long.
It was a show that got us in trouble, guys.
It was a show that got us in trouble, actually, in multiple different facets. We won't go into that as well. But, Eric, you and I had an interesting conversation regarding everything that was going on with the Broncos roster. And let's just start with the quarterback position. Let's just run through this quickly. You had Brett Rippon making the roster because of what's going on in the world right now. You know, teams potentially keeping 3 quarterbacks. It sounds like Brett Rippon might even be on the way out. Like the Broncos are looking at other options at the quarterback position, could potentially bring in some guys that are looking at being cut. Like Brett Rippon had a really good camp and he looked solid as the 3rd quarterback, but at this particular point, he's not even going to make the roster. He might not even make the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, when we made this, obviously, like the situation in the world was playing a big factor. And at the time, not even teams really knew what they wanted to do, but they feel comfortable now at this point that just 2 quarterbacks. Some teams are going to keep 3, but 2 quarterbacks with 1 on the practice squad, they don't feel the need for a 4th quarterback anymore. So, yeah, Brett Rippon, if he makes it, I think it'll be on the practice squad. They'll stick with Drew Lock, Jeff Driscoll. I think both of them staying healthy played a big factor in this. No more Riley Neal. Brett Rippon takes his place. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Denver goes and looks at other quarterbacks that are getting cut tomorrow and decides to pick up somebody off of that. And then real quick, I do want to say this. Chase Waldner, he came in with a $5 donation. Who do you predict our fullback will be, Cox or Beck? Well, Chase, we are going to get to this in actually just probably right now.
Yeah, right now.
We're just getting right to this. We'll use this that goes in here. So at running back we only had 3 of them. We had Gordon, Lindsey, Freeman, and personally, I think that still stays the same. I don't think they keep a 4th back. I think what they're going to do is I think that we would look at Levante Bellamy and Jeremy Cox making the practice squad. And the biggest reason for that is Melvin Gordon has injury concerns. Philip Lindsay has injury concerns. Royce Freeman has injury concerns. They all have injuries in their history. It's something that we want to keep an eye on. You want somebody who knows your system. Plus, being able to call 2 up, you can kind of use those. You can only call them up twice, though, and not in back-to-back games. So it offers them a little bit more versatility calling off people off the practice squad a little bit if they keep both of them. I do think that both of them end up making the practice squad. And I think Andrew Beck, I think that he has a chance for the roster, but I think the practice squad is more likely. Just to fully answer your question, Chase.
That was actually, I was going to say, because it sounds like Andrew Beck is pretty well in line for the practice squad as well. Now, I do want to say one thing just regarding Levante Bellamy. He has looked really good. There's been multiple reports coming out of training camp from guys, Benjamin Albright, also for you as well, but still, there's been multiple reports of Levante Bellamy looking.
No, everything I've heard has been like, I don't want to say it was terrible, but that it wasn't as great. Like,
okay,
everything I've heard he's been all right. Some drops, some fumbles, been all right.
But that's kind of contradicting to what I've heard. But I'll trust you and your sources. I mean, those are the guys that are there. So, but anyways, let's move this forward here really fast. Again, here we go with move this forward. The wide receiver position, the biggest one here, and it's actually 2 guys, is Deontay Spencer and Tyree Cleveland. Now, Tyree Cleveland has looked really good. He has made a lot of flash plays, has probably been the most consistent rookie at all of the rookies this year as far as producing a constant and noticeable impact on a play-by-play basis. His limited reps, he's always doing something good. Now, Deontay Spencer, there's a potential possibility of him having some gadget plays. Obviously, as a punt returner, that's probably his biggest role here. But, Eric, what is the odds that Tyree Cleveland makes this roster as wide receiver 7?
All right, real quick. I got those out there. Justin Sattler. Hey, gang. I see you both jumping into those raid invites. Hope you appreciate my hard work, gentlemen.
Hey,
man, we appreciate it as well.
Yeah,
like absolutely. Just not go off topic a little bit from Broncos. We really appreciate that. But anyways, to answer your question is, I think that the way Denver is looking at this is that they're not keeping 7 receivers. They're keeping 6 and a return specialist. That's how I think they're looking at it. I think that's the way that they're going to talk themselves into doing this. Basically is obviously Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. They're all going to make it. I mean, I know in our private chat, you, James, Carl, and I, we had a discussion about KJ Hamler going on injured reserve. That doesn't seem to be the case. Multiple conversations. I don't think that's what's going to be happening. He seems good to go. There's some worry about a re-injury to his hamstring, but not enough to ice him for 8 weeks. And then obviously Tim Patrick, Deshaun Hamilton. Tim Patrick, he's a reliable depth piece. Deshaun Hamilton, he stepped up in camp. He's been a big favorite for Drew Lock. And so I think that he's going to make it. Deontay Spencer, he's okay. Before I was talking about cutting him, and I want to make this clear, is at that time, I didn't realize that when you call players up from the practice squad, I completely missed this, that you can only do it for 2 games. I did not know that at the time. It was something that I completely overlooked, so I apologize, guys, for that. But with knowing that he's going to make the roster, and then I think Tyree Cleveland, he's done such a great job on special teams. He's done such a great job at receiver. And one person that I spoke with that's at camp with the team and everything like that, what he said was that he has been the most consistent rookie receiver out there. He hasn't had the big splash plays like Jerry Jeudy, but he hasn't had the big mistakes either that Jeudy has had, because Jeudy has dealt with some drops, but he's been the more consistent receiver. And again, special teams, him and Tim Patrick are probably your gunners. So I think all 7 make it.
That would be huge. And to go heavy at the wide receiver position like that, I mean, 6 wide receivers, as heavy as it is, to have a 7th in there, you're really kind of taking away from another position. And this is the one right here. And this is the conversation that we need to have moving to the tight end position. The Broncos, you and I had the Broncos keeping 3 guys in Noah Fant, Nick Vanette, and Albert Okwuegbunam, but we also didn't really talk about we did Jake Butt and the potential possibility of him making this roster. But right now, Albert Okwuegbunam is dealing with a hip injury, and it might be a little bit more serious than what we are being told. Like, who knows exactly the severity of his hip injury? But the way that Jake Butt has performed at this particular time, and going all the way throughout camp, and just the talent that he has coming out of Michigan, Jake Butt is in line to make this roster as the number 3 tight end. And Albert Okwuegbunam might be looking to head to injured reserve.
Yeah, one person I spoke with, he kind of said that his hip injury is a little bit more than just tightness with Okwuegbunam, so that's something to definitely monitor. I think that is a possibility. I think ultimately Denver will actually keep 4 tight ends. I know at one point I kind of speculated that it might be just 2, just because Shurmur doesn't keep any. But with Okwuegbunam having some injury concerns, I definitely think that Jake Butt is a guy that they can end up potentially keeping here. And then just letting Okwuegbunam just kind of develop and everything. The biggest thing is, and Vic Fangio said it, and a couple players have said it, Albert Okwuegbunam, he's a terrible blocker.
Yeah,
he's terrible blocker. He just has to develop so much there, and that's going to leave him in a niche role once he does get back to full health from his hip injury. And I will say that I do think that Austin Fort and Troy Fumagalli both end up on injured reserve.
Yeah, and obviously Austin Fort with that with that knee scope and everything like that after the torn ACL last year, and we're seeing kind of the same thing with Bradley Chubb. Just had some inflammation, some pain, and stuff like that. And he tweaked it again. They went and did some cleanup work and scoped it out again a couple weeks ago. So he is pretty much destined for IR. It really doesn't surprise me there. Now, on the offensive line, this is where we really got everything wrong. Obviously, with Juwan James at the time, we didn't know that was going to come. Yeah, we didn't know Juwan James was going to opt out. Obviously, Garrett Bowles, Elijah Wilkinson are going to probably be the guys at the starting tackle position. The Broncos did bring in DeMar Dotson to be at least a depth piece. I really want him to win the starting position because Elijah Wilkinson was so bad last year. But outside of those 3 guys for sure who are probably going to make the roster, There's the four-man battle here. Sounds like Jake Rogers is the guy that's played the most. He's been playing with the first team, played with the second team. Quinn Bailey, Calvin Anderson, some potential guys there. They did bring in or put a waiver claim in on Darren Paulo as well. I think he was a former Utah Ute as well. So that there's some Broncos connections with the Utah Utes as well. So it's just we got it wrong with Juwan James, and Quinn Bailey doesn't sound like he's really panning out. DeMar Dotson is going to be the guy. What do you know, Eric?
Well, I've been kind of questioning all the love for Calvin Anderson that's going around.
Right.
But conversation I had today, I kind of think I figured out where it's at. And it's just that of all these depth tackles that they have, Quinn Bailey, Jake Rogers, and Anderson, Paulo, I don't think that he's going to make the roster. I think he's set for the practice squad. Anderson is the one who's looking the best at left tackle. Okay. So I think he's the one who's going to make it, with two of the other three guys going for the practice squad. And it's simply because Calvin Anderson, he's shown he can play left tackle. Jake Rogers has shown he can't. And Quinn Bailey's viewed more as a guard right tackle option than swing tackle. So,
okay. Speaking of the guard position, you and I had some stuff flip-flop there, and everybody kind of thought that with Patrick Morris being Mike Munchak's little pet project, that he was going to be the guy first in line for the starting center position, but that's not really how it shook out. In fact, Austin Schlottman was the guy that received the starting center snaps at the onset of camp, with Lloyd Cushenberry kind of being brought in slowly, and now Cushenberry's taken over that. Patrick Morris has really struggled playing at the center position. He's struggling with twists, getting his hands up slow after snapping the football. It's really actually hard to do. Like you don't understand how hard it is to snap the football and get your hands back up and identify what you've got going on. It's an incredibly hard skill to be able to accomplish. Austin Schlottman has actually looked the better of the two between Morris and Schlottman, and Patrick Morris looks to be in line with playing at that guard position. He was really good at right guard last year. And Lloyd Cushenberry obviously is going to be the starter. He's been taking the lion's share of the first team reps for at least the last 8 or 9 days now. So kind of an interesting way that we were all proven wrong, because everybody kind of thought that Patrick Morris was going to be first in line at the center position.
So basically what I heard is that Patrick Morris, with the traits that he has, he's a little bit stubby, which is kind of hurting him at center a little bit, but they do really like him at guard. He was probably the more consistent backup guard. And then Schlottman, he's a little bit smarter. He's got a little bit more length, and so they like him at center just a little bit more. Definitely something that we had backwards. A lot of people had it backwards.
Yep.
And it's definitely a shock. I've seen a lot of people talk about Patrick Morris possibly getting cut. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that Denver keeps 10 players on their offensive line. They've dealt with so many injury concerns. Elijah Wilkinson's currently hurt. And this is something we didn't talk about, is the possibility of Elijah Wilkinson on injured reserve. I've heard some comments about how it's possible that we could see that happen because he may need surgery again on his ankle. So that's definitely a possibility there. But yeah, I definitely think that this is the thing. And then Nathaniel Moody, last thing, there's a possibility we see him on injured reserve. If we do that, then perhaps we could see like Quinn Bailey make this, because they do view him as a guard tackle. But I think at this point, they're just willing to just ride out the year with Nathaniel Moody on the roster and then just go from there.
Right. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to grab this super chat from Royal Dungava, I think is how you pronounce your name. If I pronounce that wrong, get at me at Sanderson MHH on Twitter. Do you guys think the coaching staff believes Jewell is capable of taking over as a starter? I don't really understand why else they would just cut Todd Davis other than being injured. And the biggest thing is it's the money. To me, is the money there. It's a very questionable move. I cannot really wrap my head around that. We broke it down earlier. Go back and check out the beginning of the episode if you want more of my thoughts. But as far as Josey Jewell is concerned, this really lines him up. Like it does. It lines him up to be that starting linebacker. We're going to see him probably a first and second down as a run fit linebacker to pull him off for Mark Barron, who they brought in after Justin Strnad got hurt. But as far as Jewell is concerned, he's not a coverage linebacker. He's much better as a special teams player. He's not highly athletic enough. Does a good job recognizing what's going on in front of him, scraping through the trash, and going and making plays, which is why he's really good as a special teams defender. But at the same time, it's a missed opportunity here. To me, the Broncos, if they were going to do something with Todd Davis, they should have done it a long time ago and brought in a guy to develop. Or if you're going to develop a guy, you had to bring him in months ago and get him a playbook so where he could actually see it. Like I said earlier, 10 days away from now, we're playing real live football on Monday Night Football against one of the more physical teams in the NFL in the Tennessee Titans. And you don't have a starting linebacker anymore. You really don't. Todd Davis was at least capable of being a starter. And Josey Jewell, I don't think he is.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, obviously we saw him start last year for 4 games. And I think that he gets more of a bad rep than he actually deserves for that. I'm not going to say he played great, but he played better than a lot of people give him credit for. That's hence the bad rap. And I think that's because he got benched. He was the one who got benched. And there's just things that he has to work on. I think that the big reason why he got benched was because of the issues that he was having in coverage, just lacking the consistency there that was needed. But now he's going to be playing a new role. He's going to be taking over Todd Davis's role. And I think this is a little bit better fit for him. And when it comes to passing situations, he's coming off the field.
Yeah. Well, and this is a big opportunity. And I've said it multiple times here on DVDD that Alexander Johnson, there is some coverage ability to work with there. He obviously doesn't really work well moving backwards. Side to side, he's great and can turn and run and stuff like that. But there is something to work with Alexander Johnson. So he's going to be probably, and according to what Mike Kliss said on 104.3 The Fan earlier this afternoon, that's the role that they want him in. He's going to be your 3-down linebacker on the field in most passing situations, as well as on first and second down. Now, to break down the linebacker position here just a little bit, obviously you got Alexander Johnson, Josey Jewell, Justin Hollins here. What is his role? How does Mark Barron fit into this other than just being a third down coverage linebacker and with his struggles and everything like that? And then what do you make of this move to go and get Austin Calitro? Like, how does that rotation kind of work itself out? And does Joe Jones even have a place on this roster?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's going to be interesting to see going forward. I think that basically what we're going to see is we're going to see 4 true off-ball linebackers and then the hybrid in Justin Hollins. With our edges, I don't think anything's going to change there. Vaughn Miller, Bradley Chubb, Jeremiah Tauchi, Malik Reed, that's all set in stone, I think. And I think that Derek Tuska is on his way. I think that the response of Vic Fangio of saying that he has to get stronger is the key there. So I think that between the 9 guys, Alexander Johnson, Josey Jewell, Mark Barron are your obvious ones. And I think it's going to be Austin Calitro and Justin Hollins. I think that Justin Hollins' versatility to play inside outside is what's going to help that's what's going to keep him on the roster.
Man, that length with Justin Hollins is just incredible. 6'5", he's got incredibly long arms. It's such a freak athlete that you don't even know where to play him. But to be able to play him coming off the edge and play him off ball, obviously that's a great asset to be able to have. But and again, Mark Barron, you can hate on him all you want for the coverage inabilities and stuff like that. His struggle, he's been a drop off kind of a player over the last few years. But still, I mean, the Broncos linebacker position right now might honestly, after cutting Todd Davis, might be one of the scariest things that we're going to see. It really could be. It could be the biggest detriment to this team, especially given Vic Fangio's defense. Now, on the defensive line, obviously with Christian Covington getting traded for Austin Calitro here, that means, well, first off, we were both wrong on Jonathan Harris, and I'm not going to throw this one in your face, but you had said that with Vic Fangio being in love with Jonathan Harris, that he was going to be the guy to make the roster as that 6th defensive lineman. The Broncos released him a long time ago and let the battle between DeMarcus Walker and Christian Covington ensue. And what it sounds like was that between DeMarcus Walker and Christian Covington, the guy that they didn't think was going to make the roster, they were going to trade. And they were going to run with 6 defensive linemen, that 6th guy being DeMarcus Walker. Obviously, because they traded away Christian Covington for Austin Calitro. Eric, what do you know about that?
Well, I got to say this is that we did this before camp. That's the big thing. We did this before camp. And when you're going through meetings online, you can come off impressive. Jonathan Harris, he was being impressive. I mean, they liked what they saw from him last year. He got to see action. But then he just he hit that wall, that figurative wall. They didn't see anything from him more to keep him around. They saw more from others. They decided to go that way. I was wrong on that one. I was just going off of information from last year where they really liked him. not the case. But yeah, I do think that 6 defensive linemen is the case. I question the need for it, and the reason for that is they really don't do 3 defensive or 3 line sets that much anymore.
Right.
You keep Mike Purcell. He's your nose tackle that plays about 40% or so, or 40% snaps or so, and then you just rotate Shelby Harris, Joel Casey, Draymond Jones, and McTelvin Ajim. Like, you keep your guys fresh. Put DeMarcus Walker on the practice squad if you want to keep him there, and then let him get there and call him up if you need to and use him, whatever. But yeah, I don't see it for 5, but I think that this does guarantee that DeMarcus Walker will make it. I'm kind of questioning this. It seems like they've been talking about moving him for a while now. They've made multiple calls about moving Walker, going back to the draft. So it just kind of always felt with every conversation that I had about DeMarcus Walker that the time was coming. It was just that split needed to happen between team and player. But he seems to have had a change and going to be anxious to see what he does. And yeah, congrats to DeMarcus Walker for making it.
Yeah, at least to this particular point, it sounds like he's going to make it. And if nothing else, if he doesn't make the 53, it does sound like they're going to put him on the practice squad. So good for him. And obviously, your starters, Joel Casey, Shelby Harris, Draymond Jones. I got a bold prediction for you guys coming here soon about Draymond Jones. And those are going to be your top 3 guys that rotate for the most part. McTelvin Ajim, I'm not sure exactly his role right now, but Mike Purcell, obviously the number 1 graded, and I just put this out on an article, milehighhuddle.com, ranking the AFC West defensive linemen. Go check that out if you guys get a chance. But Mike Purcell was the number 1 rated run defender as far as any down defensive lineman per Pro Football Focus last year. Number 1 rated run defender. And he also had the highest run stop percentage of any inside defensive lineman with at least 200 snaps, 14.1%. That's a pretty decent run stop percentage there. Now, there's a couple of questions that are coming in here, and one that I want to grab really fast from Chris Cardenas on YouTube. It says, hey, I just realized they released Davis to get Amukamara on a 1-year, $3 million deal. Sounds nice to me. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting thing. And going back to Todd Davis and his money that would have been guaranteed at week 1 for making the final roster here, Prince Amukamara obviously doesn't have a deal right now. So if the Broncos are going to bring him in, they're going to wait until after the 53-man roster is finalized, kick a guy off of that roster, and bring in Prince Amukamara, because after the first day that the 53-man roster is finalized, no veteran money is guaranteed. So if they're going to
after week 1.
After week 1? Okay,
yes, after week 1.
I apologize for that. But anyway, so it'd be after week 1 then. The Prince Amukamara could be a guy that the Broncos do bring in on a 1-year, $3 million deal. It makes perfect sense. We pounded the table for him on Dove Valley Deep Divers a while ago in April, and we talked like multiple people on the Huddle Up Podcast Network have talked about bringing in Prince Amukamara. He fits in with Vic Fangio. He knows Vic Fangio. He knows the scheme. Played very well in Chicago under Vic Fangio. Why not? I mean, it's a great way. And the Broncos' cornerback depth, to me, is still kind of sketchy. And let's break this down just a little bit, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing is with the cornerback. I mean, obviously they traded Isaac Yiadom, which is a good move. It was just time for a change of scenery. He wasn't a fit in the defensive scheme of Vic Fangio, so they kind of did need to sit there and just move on from him. He lost the battle for the cornerback 3, and it seems that Devontae Harris and Asang or Asang Bossi have seemed to win that. Ojemudia and Devontae Bosby are going to be kept around for depth. I think that they keep 6 corners. I think those are your 6 corners. You see Boye, Callahan, Ojemudia, Bosby, Harris, Bossi. And then maybe depending on how the first week goes with the cornerbacks, maybe we could see them move something like sending like Bosby or Ojemudia down to the practice squad and keep them protected, or even Harris down or Bossi, one of those guys, and then bring in Prince Amukamara. But yeah, I mean, I've heard some stuff that it wouldn't be surprising to see Boye, Callahan, and Bossi be our starting 3 corners. So there's definitely a lot of intrigue about this with this position, and a big reason for that is just because that we had to see so much growth from the depth. I mean, we had no idea what Bryce Callahan was going to do, if he was going to even stay healthy through training camp. AJ Boye, I mean, he's the new addition, and then we just had this bag of pieces that one of them had to step up, and really Bossi's the only one to really step up. Been consistent, made some big plays, had some really big moments. Devontae Harris, he started off slow. He had the last 10 days, 2 weeks have been great for him, but he really started off slow. And then Devontae Bosby, he was doing great there, and then he had that injury, and I've heard some reports that he's seeming a little conscientious about tackling and just wanting to avoid injury. So something to keep an eye on there.
King Stacy saying that I'm hearing that we should hearing people say we should trade for Quan Alexander or Miles Jack. Probably not going to happen. Those are too high cap hits. We kind of broke that down a little bit. Quan Alexander.
Let's go get Fred Warner. He should be in Denver anyways.
Yeah, true. That's very true. That's very true. Let's see here. Where were we at? Oh, the one thing I wanted to add about Asong Bassi here really fast is that he got those first team reps the other day, and Vic Fangio praised him in his post practice press conference. It was something you don't see from Vic Fangio very often. When they ask, specifically, hey, player did this today, what did you think about that? He's like, hey, he handled himself really well. It was more of a test for him, and he did great. So Asong Bassi just being the guy that's going to come in and step in, and I think he could take over that number 3 cornerback spot. I really do. I like him a lot. Not really big. He's a smaller guy, not really fluid, but still really good, especially in the slot. Bryce Callahan has done really well on the outside from what it sounds, taking on Cortland Sutton on the outside. And if you want to, you can bring in Devontae Harris, who's stepped up, especially over the last 8, 9, 10 practice days, and has kind of grabbed hold of that number 3 cornerback spot to play on the outside. But if you're going to put Bryce Callahan as a number 2 cornerback on the outside, Devontae Harris doesn't line up on the inside. That's not where he's going to be good at. Why not put Asong Bassi there and see how that works? Now, again, to go back to the safety position, once again, I'm terrified. I really am of the depth on this team. Now, Justin Simmons has not missed a snap in 2 years. Just get that out of the way first. He should have been paid. And after seeing what Budda Baker just got paid, we talked about that last week on Dub Valley Deep Divers. But after seeing what Budda Baker got paid, Justin Simmons should have been paid as well, and paid a lot more than that. But Kareem Jackson, 31, 32 years old, something like that, on the downturn of his career, really good in the run fits and everything that Vic Fangio wants him to do, super physical player. But he's got an opt-out. There's a team option, I believe, for the third year of his contract, and he could be on his way out of Denver. Do you really trust Trey Marshall or Elijah Holder or Duke Dawson to be the guy that's going to step in, say that Kareem Jackson is going to be gone? I don't know if I do.
Yeah, I'm just – oh, no. I mean, outside of Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, again, it is just a mess. It's good to hear that Trey Marshall and Elijah Holder are doing very well. But, again, it's just hard, really, right at this time. Just because we don't know. Without any preseason games, it's hard to really judge. And then you have this thing of, what are you going to do after this? Because safety budget is you can't afford to pay Justin Simmons and keep Kareem Jackson. So it's definitely, there's a lot of questions going forward about this. But right now, I think that they keep 4 here. And I think that Duke Dawson's actually the odd man out. And they potentially try to keep him around on the practice squad.
That would kind of sting me just a little bit. Elijah Holder doesn't move very well, and I know that he's been playing pretty good, but Duke Dawson also has some versatility. He can slide down inside and play as a nickel defensive back. I don't know that
he's Elijah Holder. He was moved to safety for the same reasons Elijah Holder was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's stiff and all that. All those issues.
I don't know. I'd just rather have Duke Dawson, who played in some games last year for the Broncos, over Elijah Holder, and that's just
but Dawson didn't play well.
That's really neither here nor there. Now, let's see if we can grab some more questions.
That's neither here nor there. That's actually a big thing.
Argue your point. Argue your point. Which one would you prefer? If they're the same player, which one would you prefer? A guy that has experience or a guy that we don't know? He saw time on the practice squad last year. He never played.
Based off of what I've seen and heard of in practice, I'm going to go with the guy that's been doing much better, and that's Elijah Holder.
Okay.
Duke Dawson's been struggling.
Yeah, that's true.
Just as he struggled on the field last year. Okay. And something you say is, you mentioned he has experience, but experience is great, but it was bad experience.
That's true.
It's like Mark Barron. I'm going to throw this out here. Mark Barron has plenty of experience covering, but it's bad experience. Doesn't mean he's good. It was just bad experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
that's very fair.
Before we get out of here, there's one issue here. We're at 54 men on our roster.
Okay.
Who's got to go? You got to get down to 53. Who's this final cut?
DeMarcus Walker.
For me, I agree. It'd be DeMarcus Walker. Again, as I said, I don't see the need for 6 offensive linemen in this scheme, or defensive linemen. I don't. But I don't think that's the way Denver would go. Looking over this, I think that we ultimately see, because I added Jake Butt to it, I ultimately think we'd see 3 tight ends before we see 5 defensive linemen. So I think Jake Butt to the practice squad.
Jake Butt to the practice squad and not Alberto Cuegmanom to IR?
Yeah. I haven't heard enough about his injury to be like really comfortable putting him on injury reserve. They definitely do have a plan for him this year. So, I mean, if they do go IR, it could be injury reserve designated to return. That's definitely a possibility. But, I think that it would be Jake Butt. And the biggest reason why is if Okuegbunam is going to be out, well, guess what? You can call up Jake Butt. You can call up Andrew Beck. You can call up Jeremy Cox. You can call up all these other guys. So that's the way I think it goes.
It's just so crazy because you look at the incoming guy, the guy that just brought in here today, Austin Calitro. What does he bring? You know, they obviously traded for him. Why do you think?
And the reason why they traded for him is that they didn't want to risk missing out on him on waivers again.
And that's true. That's true. They did put in 2 waiver claims on him. One last year, he got claimed by Jacksonville, and then one in the offseason, and he got claimed by Cincinnati, who both had higher waiver priority. So, do you want to risk cutting him down at final cut downs and then have him go through the waiver process again?
Yeah,
and I don't know, man. It's a very Tyree Cleveland, Deontay Spencer. There's a conversation there. Tyree Cleveland to the practice squad, keeping 6 guys because Deontay Spencer is going to be your starting punt returner day one.
I think that his ability as a gunner on special teams, I think that's going to keep Tyree Cleveland on the roster.
Is there let me just pick your brain for a second here. Is there a shocker cut? Is there a shocker cut at the wide receiver position? Do we see Tim Patrick or Deshaun Hamilton hit the bricks?
I don't think so.
No.
I think that if anything, they may try to trade one of them. But I think if we were going to see one of them trade, it would have been today.
Yeah.
So I think that they're making the roster. I think it's 7.
Yeah. From what I've heard, it sounds like 7 are going to be there. It does.
Yep.
So DeMarcus Walker, to me, that's the one that I'm going with. I'd rather keep the upside of Butt around. Well, I guess you could put him on the practice squad. I don't know. That's tricky there.
I mean, you can flip him around, but just the sense I get is that Denver, and reading the tea leaves here, it seems like Denver just really wants to keep 6 defensive linemen. That's the trend. They want to stick with it.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. That is a fair assessment.
And we have one more issue, practice squad. We have 20 guys, got to get down to 16. After this, we'll get out of here. And we want to go through this quickly. So, real quick, Jake Butt, obviously, I took him off the roster. I mean, this could be Jake Butt or DeMarcus Walker, whichever one. But I'm in control of it, so I've made it Jake Butt. So, But either way, DeMarcus Walker or Jake Butt, I think that one spot's guaranteed for whichever one of these guys doesn't make it.
Yeah, and they'll be protected too. They won't be able to be claimed off the practice squad either.
And then Brett Rippon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. I want to go Brett Rippon or insert quarterback here.
Yeah, quarterback placeholder.
Yep.
Here, quarterback.
Levante Bellamy with what he did was probably good enough to me to stick around. Andrew Beck, obviously, with the fullback tight end versatility.
I'm going to throw one in here real quick and interrupt this. I think that not only Levante Bellamy, I think Jeremy Cox makes it.
Jeremy Cox.
With the fact that they've been using him as a fullback with the first team over Andrew Beck, I think that's saying big things for Jeremy Cox.
Well, and that could also mean the end of Andrew Beck in Denver too. It really could.
I don't think so. I think at the very least, I think that if they keep 4 tight ends, it's between Jake Butt and Andrew Beck. And whichever one, if they go that route, whichever one they don't keep ends up on the practice squad. In this case, I think they both do, especially with Okuegbunam hurt. He can be one of those guys that's an inactive on game day. And then you can get 4 games from tight ends from Jake Butt and Andrew Beck for your first 4 weeks.
Right, yeah.
Because there's been some speculation that Okuegbunam may be out. They say he's going to be practicing next week, but maybe it's 3-4 weeks. Well, there you go. You have Jake Butt and Andrew Beck right there.
Rotate the 2 of them. You get 4 weeks out of it. Put Alberto on ice, essentially. Fred Brown, I think he's probably gone.
I think he's gone as well. I do think that one receiver makes it, and I think it's going to be Kendall Hinton.
Yeah, it does sound like Kendall Hinton's been playing very well.
He's been super impressive, guys. Like, he's one guy that I remember just after this, all the focus was on Douglas Coleman, on Levante Bellamy, on Asang Bossi. I remember all the focus was on them of the undrafted picks. And I remember doing my video breakdown for Kendall Hinton. And I was sitting there, I was like, this guy, he's a sleeper to make this. Not the roster, but the practice squad. I guess from what I've heard, Zach Azzani really likes him. He likes the potential he has. He likes what he can bring to an offense. So I think that they're going to keep him around this year. Maybe use him a little bit with calling him up, but more so developing him for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I've heard a lot of good things about Kendall Hinton, too. He's been pretty consistent as well, from what I understand. Quinn Bailey, Darren Paulo.
Jake Rogers, the 3 offensive tackles. I think only 2 of them make it.
Probably Quinn Bailey and Jake Rogers is because they've been around the Broncos. Darren Paulo, I know they brought him in on a waiver claim, but it's a waiver claim late in camp. He doesn't have enough time to really learn the offensive system to kind of get acclimated with everything like that. I understand he has some tackle versatility there, but I'd rather have Quinn Bailey, who can slide down into the guard and be that right tackle or potentially a swing tackle, and Jake Rogers, who's played very well right tackle as well. Does Darren Paulo
2 games? He has 2 games of experience. Yep. And my thing is bringing in a guy on a practice squad this late, clearly you see something from him. I think Darren Paulo is a guy that Mike Munchak wants to work with. And I think that Quinn Bailey's versatility to play inside, I think that's where they want to play him a little bit more. I think those 2 make it over Jake Rogers, who is just a right tackle.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
older.
Fair point. Yeah, that's true too. That is very true. Yeah, you know what? I agree with that. Let's go, Darren Paulo. And you're right, because they did bring him in on that waiver claim late in the season. You never know with Mike Munchak. You really never know. And the one thing I will say though is Jake Rogers started out at right tackle day 1 of training camp. He was the starting right tackle because Elijah Wilkinson was hurt and Juwan James opted out. Jake Rogers was the guy seeing the time at right tackle to start training camp.
Yeah.
So there's something to work with there. That's a flip a coin, really, to me. We'll go with Darren Paulo just to shorten this up. As far as Douglas Coleman III and Duke Dawson goes,
well, I was gonna go down and start with the defensive linemen. Obviously, we have DeMarcus Walker making hit, but Deshaun Williams, he's the only other defensive lineman on here. I don't think they keep a defensive lineman, honestly, on the practice squad. If they do, I think it's somebody they claim it from elsewhere.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I had to scroll down there, guys. I apologize there. So Deshaun Williams is out. Let's see, Douglas Coleman III and Johnson.
Derek Tuska going to edge. Derek Tuska, I think he makes the practice squad.
Yeah, I was going to say that immediately just because of draft pedigree.
Yep. And then we have spots for linebackers, and we have a couple linebackers here. Josh Watson and Joe Jones.
I would rather see Joe Jones with the athleticism. I think he's a little bit better in coverage, and he offers more on special teams versatility than Josh Watson. Josh Watson's looking on the outside. Really? You think both?
I think both.
Wow. Okay. So who else? Well, obviously Juwan Winfrey's on the outside looking in because of the wide receiver depth there. They don't need to. They got 7 guys that they're bringing into the roster. They don't need to have a practice squad guy there. If nothing else,
they don't need to have more than one guy there, really. Yeah, and if injury occurs and they call up Kendall Hinton, well, you can go pick up a linebacker from elsewhere.
Yep.
So let's see. What are we at? We're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. So we have 5 spots left, and we actually have 4 guys here. I think that a couple of them will be saved for elsewhere. I think that Douglas Coleman and Duke Dawson also both make the practice squad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Trinity Benson on the outside looking in, Juwan Winfrey on the outside looking in. I don't think that Juwan Winfrey has just been an attitude problem. He's been not effective. He's failed to pick everything up. He's a quality blocker, but not great as a receiver, in my opinion. It's just that was a wasted pick. You brought in a guy to potentially be an outside receiver, a boundary receiver, and he just hasn't picked anything up. And I don't know that he has a spot on this team anymore. Sorry.
Yeah. If they do keep a second receiver on the practice squad, I think that'd be Trinity Benson. I think he just offers some big play stuff for the offense a little bit that they're just kind of wanting, but there just seems to be a bunch of issues there. So I mean, we could see there's a bunch of different options they have here, really, for it. And basically, what I'm going to say is that we're at 12, right? 12?
Yep.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13. We're at 13. My final thing is we'll save the last 3 spots on the practice squad. They're picked up from other teams.
Yep, they're going to be from other teams. That's exactly what I was going to say. Their waiver claims, we saw that with the Broncos last year as well. Andrew Beck was one. Devontae Harris was one. There was a center that they brought in. I can't remember his name. And another one that Broncos actually brought in 4 guys on waivers from last year. I got correct on that multiple times, and now I remember. But anyways, guys. Oh, wait, hold up. James coming in here from across the pond. Great work, guys. Eric, what's your evaluator pitch for Leon Jacobs? Say the Broncos trade Royce Freeman to the Jags, Reichwell Armstead on the CV reservation. What else gets sent?
So, real quick, James also says waiver additions have to go through the active roster, though. They do. I'm not saying that they claim them off of waivers. I'm saying that they sign them after they clear waivers.
Yeah.
After they clear waivers, you can sign them back to the practice squad. That's what has to happen to your own players, too.
Yep.
After that point, I'm saying is that they'll sign 3 people to the practice squad after that. Just to be clear. But Leon Jacobs, man, this guy is – I think he's more of what they want Justin Hollins to be than Justin Hollins is. He's a guy he's pretty solid as a pass rusher, very athletic, long, lanky guy. Not really lanky, but well-built. Like, dude's jacked, like, if I remember right. Yeah, I would take him. I think he's a guy who offers up a lot more upside to play off-ball than Justin Hollins does. And then what was the rest of the question? What else gets sent?
Yeah, what else? Because Reichwell Armstead is on the CV reserve list.
I'd probably send a 6th or 7th round pick along with Royce Freeman. Like, that gives them another back.
Yeah.
Gives them a pick, and I think Leon Jacobs was a 6th round pick.
I don't remember. That actually sounds fair, though. You give them, especially because they're in the full-scale rebuild. They just dropped Leonard.
Well, he was a 7th round pick, so you'd be one up in it.
Yeah,
and he's not. I mean, what little bit he's played well.
So would you go like a Leon Jacobs and a 6th for Royce Freeman and a 7th?
I'd switch it. Royce Freeman and a 6th for Leon Jacobs and a 7th.
Yeah,
I think that the biggest thing for me with that is Leon Jacobs. He's still going as a football player and everything like that, and Royce Freeman's pretty beat up right now.
Yeah.
A lot of miles on his tires entering the NFL, so I think that draft pick thing helps balance it out a little bit.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us tonight, though. We're actually 12 minutes over our time limit. We do apologize to Chad for that one. You guys are watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lance Sanderson. For my co-host, Erick Trickel. You guys can find us on Twitter at SandersonMHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also, guys, make sure you guys are following at DVDD_pod to stay in touch with what is going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers, at Mile High Huddle for instant news and analysis, opinion articles, film breakdowns on your Denver Broncos. Head on over to Huddle Up Pod if you guys are in a financial position to be able to do so. Get yourself a hat, a t-shirt. It's a great way to support the show. If not, the 3 easiest things you guys can do is to subscribe wherever you're watching this, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe, please. That's one of the best things you can do for us. Like everything that you see, like every video. Erick has a whole bunch of stuff coming up on YouTube, any articles on Facebook. Like those articles and share it. If you love it, share it to everybody. Now, one other thing really fast, guys, I just want to bring your attention to this. Today's episode is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Enter their $1 million football pick'em giveaway. Go to sportsbetting.com/pick'em-football. That is sportsbetting.com/pick'em-football for a chance to win $1 million. Erick, before we get out of here, man, is there anything else you want to drop some knowledge on? Any last words, bud?
Somber note with this time of year is we just got to remember people are losing their jobs. I know it's very easy to harp on these players, Todd Davis, all this stuff like that. But just remember that these people, they're losing their jobs. Their families now have to move, their kids, new school, all this stuff like that. That is the somber side of cut down day.
Yeah.
And with a lot of these players, this is it. Their NFL dreams are coming to an end within the next not even 24 hours. Some to remember, and just remember that and try to be courteous to these players on this day. I mean, some of them will come out and say some harsh things, but it's a painful time for players. Just something to keep down. It's somber side. It's a bittersweet day for analysts like us, Lance, because there's so much to talk about with this. And sometimes it's hard because they're losing their job, and we're sitting here. We got to try and be as honest with our opinions, with our takes as we possibly can. And sometimes that means, so-and-so player just doesn't play well. Like some of these guys, they'll get picked up. Gary Smith, I mean, he says Davis will be fine. Someone will pick him up. Yeah, sure. Todd Davis will be, but say Trinity Benson, will somebody pick him up? Probably not. Levante Bellamy, maybe. I mean, Jake Rogers, he's bounced around the NFL already. This may be it for him.
Yeah,
just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, keep your opinions civil, guys. I mean, you can be objective in your analysis, but don't be overly critical and don't start slinging names and stuff like that. Please, I mean, these are people too. They're professional athletes. They get paid to do this for. I've paid a lot of money to play this game, but still, losing your job sucks, man. It's one of the worst things you can go through. Now, with that, guys, we're going to sign off here. Once again, I am Lance Sanderson for my co-host, Erick Trickel. Y'all stay safe. Have a great Labor Day weekend. We'll see you guys next week.
3-day weekend. Woo!